You got nothing?
Yeah, sorry. This isn't our normal style of how we do it. We're testing out new equipment. This room is a sound room. So it's like, Eli's like, why are you doing the shop?
Was that a pun?
Sound
What
room?
did I say? It's a sound room? Sound room. Yeah, it's like, but he's like, why don't you do your podcast where all the equipment is? I'm like, well, because I like to take our laptop out of the shop.
You'll have to give me a tour later.
I will after Aaron leaves and doesn't bog us down.
No, I'm only here for a short time, and then you guys are on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You're here for the short time, so we can have a good time?
That's right.
Uh-huh.
So basically, we'll just get right into it. And what we do is we just introduce ourselves, which this is the Two Opinionated Guys podcast. I'm Marshall, and this is my co-host Aaron. And
Hello, gentlemen.
And we're
two opinionated guys?
Two opinionated guys. And then we sometimes invite an opinionated woman or an opinionated man.
Which one do I fall into?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't want to classify you yet.
Don't typecast me.
And we're with Peter Tapazio. Right? Don't assume. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's rude.
Yeah. So
I prefer they.
Them, they.
Them, they.
I'll go with Z.
We're already gonna get some flack for this. I can tell.
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. I go by he, him. Marshall actually is what I go by the most.
I say that because within some of the groups and meetings that I go to, that's pronouns are a very serious thing. And I remember when somebody asked, like, what's your pronoun? And I said, I don't necessarily know what that means. And you know what a pronoun is. Yeah, but you can really come across ignorant and mean. Like, you really can.
Do you feel like you haven't been plugged into, like, that level of politics in the last 5 years? Because that's become huge in the last few years. It's like gender pronouns and
I understand it. I just
I never
recognize myself to be like. So somebody asked me, like, what's your pronoun? And I was like, him, it, and they were like that's rude, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like I was ignorant to the point where I was like offensive, and I wasn't trying to be. That's
the dangerous.
I guess
ground
I'm
we're
asking.
going.
Witty and funny.
Before you keep going, just to be clear with our audience, this is not the topic we're going down, but we're going to go down it here for a minute because we're definitely
may just switch. So.
Yes,
change. We were going to talk about voting. Right now, we're just going to talk about gender
voting
pronouns.
Sounds so boring now.
It does kind of, huh? Well, I have an issue with the pronouns a little bit because somebody was like, "Oh, yeah, she goes by they, them," and I was like, "That's incorrect. You can't be a they is plural." Right? I mean, how can you be a they?
because they're not associating themselves with a gender.
I know, but that's implying when you say they, that's always, as far as I know, more than one, right?
Right, because they're more than one gender.
Yes.
Oh, so when I'm telling
which is
my family, I'm like, oh yeah, they are coming over for dinner. All of a sudden, they're like setting the table for how many plates?
But then we get into what is gender fluid, because isn't that the same thing as multiple genders?
Doesn't fluid just sound kind of gross anyway? When you say it's fluid, gender's fluid, it's kind of got this.
It'd be worse if you said gender moist.
Moist never makes anything better, so that is true.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, a Twinkie is moist. Twinkie is not fluid.
Twinkies last forever and they're unchanging. Where when
you
talk about
stopped
genders,
making them
they
in like
change.
2015.
Then they quickly brought them back. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
Full on, they did?
Until somebody else bought them and then...
No, you knew it was going to happen, but people raged.
Yeah. But unchanging. Unlike genders, Twinkies don't change.
Got it.
Right? And luckily, we haven't been required to say such things in our workplace because we're a private business, but I understand a lot of public businesses, or the bigger the corporation gets, they have to. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure you probably run into that a little bit more than we do. I don't run into a lot of people who go, excuse me, I go by...
I don't in my business career. I do in my personal life with some of the meetings and groups that I attend.
Let me ask you, because I get it, people want to be respectful and like, oh, they identify as whatever they choose to identify as. But if you were like really close friends with somebody, like let's say me, for instance, and all of a sudden one day I was like,
you'll get there.
Okay, Peter, I go by they them. Would you be like, don't be an idiot? I'm just gonna call you him, so we don't.
You would still go by Marshall.
Yeah,
so
well, that makes sense. Yeah.
I guess in that scenario.
But if you're going to talk about me to other people and you're like, oh, he does this and he does that, he plays guitar really well and he's
I think social relationships are negotiated. And so it's like, if I don't know you well and you say you want to be called something, I don't have the negotiating power to tell you differently, so I'll just call you what you want to be called, right? But I know you, so of course I would call you an idiot because I'm like, Marshall, you're an idiot. You're him and you're Marshall.
I'd say you're Ginger. And go with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never had somebody. I've never had. You know what? It's hard to. I don't know. I've never been in a situation. Are you trying to tell us something?
Yeah.
No, I think
Rachel?
that
Is
Plot
Rachel
twist
around?
intervention.
Where is Rachel? Is she gone?
she is gone
She, see?
with hanging out with them, which is a lot of people, not just one.
Got it.
To be clear.
Interesting.
Yeah. If you had to pick a pronoun, you'd go by
He?
He said it already, so.
Yeah. I mean, that was just being a smart ass. And I actually did, Aaron, I said that once, and someone was like, whoa, dude. I was like, oh my God, I'm just trying to be funny. And they're like, that's not funny. And I was like, okay, know your audience.
Yeah.
Well, let's see.
But I guess him?
Somebody came by the other day and with a baby, and all the women were like, "Oh my gosh, she's so cute," and I was like, "Yeah, oh, it's looking at me weird." And they go, all of them just like looked at me. I don't know. I mean,
Well,
is that not
A
appropriate?
baby isn't it?
it's becoming more common because my wife found some little beanie and she was like, I can't tell if this is a girl or a boy beanie. So she goes to the clerk and she goes, hey, is this male or female? And the gender is like, I don't conform to gender, or something snarky. And in a very condescending way nonetheless, which never helps your cause.
It's a beanie.
Yeah, it's a beanie. She goes,
But-
he's a boy, so is this going to work or not?
The issue, well, I think clothing stores are going to be all messed up because sometimes you do go, what am I? Is this a girl's shirt or not a girl's shirt? And you know, like
probably
that.
run into that a lot more than me.
Thank you. And
The deep D.
it's like that Office episode where they're like, you're wearing a woman's suit. He's like, no, it's not a woman's suit. Who's it made by? Mystery. He's like, it is a mystery because the buttons are all on the wrong side.
I don't care if it's a male or a female.
As long as it looks good and
If
fits
I
right.
like it, I like it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really. To me, if I walked into a store and it was just all androgynous, I guess would be the word, where there was no he, her, I don't care.
My issue though is when you go to the doctor and you're like, I have some problems downstairs, and then they're like, okay, well, what do you got? I mean, how's that conversation go?
Well, I think your doctor would know.
Would they know right away? Because there's some people I wouldn't know until you
strike
pulled
me
their
as a
pants down.
Zoom care type of guy though, who's like
Yeah.
calls it in, goes to the local.
First of
one.
all, yeah, Zoom care, you still go to a physical doctor.
right, but they don't know you until you get there.
I take
Right.
it as the
So
more of a
again, what would they when
web-
they say?
uk.org Zoom
Yes,
doctor's visit.
or those like Skype meetings with your doctor.
Or you say, Rachel, I'm feeling this, and she grabs the encyclopedia.
Yeah, I mean, are you
Oh,
guys
there you go.
guys
That's
on
the
the
one there?
are you guys on the page where you're like, there's not really a circumstance where it would matter if you identified as a male or female?
Doesn't matter. That's the point.
It doesn't ever. There's never a circumstance where it matters.
Unless, for me personally, if I was dating someone and they did not reveal that until they revealed it, that would be a problem.
You know, and they can change their birth certificate. Did you know that?
Who's they? See? You can't say
The,
that.
the government. No, they is not confusing until people confused it.
But you
The
saying,
government can
you
change
saying
it.
they in that sentence,
So,
in that
Peter, if
situation is considered derogatory.
If you-
in this context, very confusing.
A lot of things I
And
say are
confusing in this
derogatory.
context.
If you want to make sure the person you're dating is born female, you would have to see some baby pictures.
Maybe not. I mean,
How would you know? How would you know in this day and age?
well, I would hope my eyes could tell, but I mean, I am attracted to a lot of different things. However, no, probably not.
quickly, however,
I mean, I don't think that's part of the Tinder profile. Can I have a picture of your birth certificate?
That's true, but it could be in the future.
Yeah.
Could be.
And again, they can change it. They, meaning the government.
True. Well, to bring this full circle
Mhm.
to maybe the topic, my sister sent me this meme earlier today, poignant to our conversation,
Mm.
and it said,
Which we weren't supposed to be talking about. But yeah.
"Yes, dating in 2013. Do I want to Netflix and chill with this person? Question mark. Dating in 2020. Do I want to witness the collapse of capitalism, fight next to them during the revolution, and go through the apocalypse with this person? Question mark. Dating's changed.
Yeah, that's probably pretty accurate. Although I will say, Marshall, I think what was it like? Not even a year ago, you were like, I don't even know what Netflix and chill is.
I don't know if those are the exact words that came out of my mouth.
I'm pretty sure.
I think I understand the connotation. I just still don't quite.
You are the oldest millennial I know.
That's
You're an elder millennial.
kind of rude, and I'm okay with it at the same time because it has
All out.
because a millennial has some negative connotations with it. In a lot of my other
What
circles,
negative connotations does millennial have?
are you kidding? Laziness, not hardworking, jobless. Actually, is probably the best title for them.
And millennials stop at 35, right?
Here's a
35 is the
question.
cutoff?
Do millennials like to vote?
Oh,
Oh, let's bring it in now. So,
I see.
are you a millennial? You're not.
I am not. I am I don't. I think I'm Generation X. I'm 44.
So you should. Well, I don't know if you should feel like you need to vote, but a lot of this stemmed from one day you and I were talking, and I don't know what came up because for some reason I always like to insert politics into a lot of conversations, whether it makes people comfortable or uncomfortable. I don't really care.
Yeah,
I just like to. What?
I met you.
Yeah. So I just throw that in there, and then you're like, I don't know, I don't care, I don't vote. And I was like, that's dumb. Why don't you vote? And you're like, it doesn't matter. I don't remember your answer. And I said, you know what? Just save it. Someday, come on my podcast, and then we'll talk about why you do not vote as an American citizen.
Our podcast. Yeah. I mean, I think Aaron should be a little diminished.
Well, I'm just trying to quote what I said.
As a millennial, for sure.
So maybe I incorrectly said it, but I did say my podcast. So
you definitely said my podcast.
It's really good.
Yeah. You know
I didn't call it the Marshall podcast. I called it the 2 NPD.
Marshall does like to keep baby in the corner. So old enough to know that reference. Okay, good.
So, why do you not vote? Let's start there. Why do you not vote?
My answer will be the same as it was then because my vote doesn't matter.
Okay.
Do you feel like you have an educated? If you voted, would it be educated?
No.
No.
That's another reason why I do not.
Are you independent, or you don't have a political party?
I don't have a political party. I hate them all equally. I do. I like bits and pieces of what I know of each of them, and I dislike bits and pieces of what I know of each of them as well. Why I say I do not vote is because the popular vote doesn't matter. It's electoral college.
Which is essentially the popular vote in that state.
In that state, but not for the country. And if we're a democracy and it's the whole entire country, when Al Gore won the popular vote and did not win the election...
I don't know. There were a lot of hanging chads going on then. But the really...
Air quotes.
So are you saying your vote doesn't matter in Oregon, or your vote doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things?
I'm saying my vote doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. If I vote, it only matters for Oregon.
Right.
And our president is in Oregon.
Yeah, but I mean, it counts towards electoral votes to that president.
But that doesn't matter.
Like 7 of them.
Right.
To be exact, like 7 of them. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, I don't even know how many Oregon has, because that's your second point is I don't know enough to make an educated guess, and I don't want to just go in there and just poke dots on these things and be like, oh, but this one's not, I saw a negative ad on this person, so I'm going to vote for the other one. Or why I think it doesn't matter to that point, to the degree, is like Wisconsin. Big swing vote.
Yeah.
Big swing state.
If you lived there, would you vote?
No, because it's the same premise. Whether you have one electoral college or 55, why do the people of Wisconsin's vote count more than mine in Oregon? They do.
I don't think they do.
So if President A and President B, one wins Oregon, one wins Wisconsin, it was just a 2-state battle, the president who won Wisconsin would win.
Yeah, that's not how it works, though. I mean, I get...
That is how it works. Whoever gets the electoral college wins.
Yes, I understand.
Regardless of popular vote.
I understand that, but every state does matter. If all of a sudden the states that they thought mattered...
It doesn't really matter, because when you watch the news and they talk about the presidential election, and you'll see it, and like C-SPAN, whatever you're watching, they'll be like, here are the 50 states, these are the 13 that matter. If one president wins 13 states and another one wins 37,
and so this goes back to last week's podcast, where it's like, is the West Coast ever going to flip? And I told
Not with people like Peter here, sitting here saying his vote doesn't matter.
But I'm with Peter on that. I go,
convince me it does.
It's not going to flip. So in that regard, I go, yeah.
We have a recorded bet on that one. But I guess though, let's
convince me my vote matters. My vote matters.
Let's pause that for a second and let's just
shelve that.
Yeah, shelve that. Put a pin in it.
Okay.
And then let's ask, maybe more expansive. I mean, there's not just presidential things we vote on.
Correct.
There's governors. There's what else? I mean, we don't really vote on mayors, right?
I
But commissioners.
I get the voters'
policies, like whether something is really important to you. I mean, they voted on, should a man and a man be able to get married? I mean, that was whether you really felt strongly against it or for it.
Right.
They vote on taxes. I mean,
yes.
Don't you feel like taxation without representation is something that this country fought for and was pretty adamant that they wanted representation for? And now you're going, I don't care about representation.
That's not true. I agree with... there was a lot of questions in there, so let's see if I can remember all of them with that run-on sentence of Pete bashing. However, the first thing when it comes to, yes, there are a lot of things you can vote for. Correct. I agree with that. I also feel that, I'm not going to throw an arbitrary number out there, but the majority of the population doesn't educate themselves enough to make that decision. They make an opinion-based decision and they vote. I don't want to be that person. So I think it's important to vote if you know the issues, if you know the candidates, so on and so forth. I don't think a lot of people do, and I don't think candidates do a good enough job other than getting this little voter's pamphlet and reading a paragraph blurb that was created by their campaign manager or whoever
Well, that's who they speak to. I am curious though, because you said you don't know a lot about the candidates or their specific policies, but like regardless of their policies, do you have political beliefs or economic beliefs that you go, if I knew that one of the candidates was strongly inclined to do this, I would vote for them then?
Yes and no. We'll pin that and back to part two of Marshall's question.
Part 2 of 45.
Do I believe in taxation without representation? No, I do not. But I also don't believe. I think it's all. I think there's a lot of crap out there. I think there's a lot of things that say are going to get done. There's a lot of monies that's supposed to go certain places and they don't. I grew up in Lake Oswego and I remember Measure 5 like it was yesterday, and that was a big deal for Lake Oswego.
Measure 5? I don't even know.
Measure 5 was to take the school taxes and split them up equally. So why people lived in Lake Oswego, why people live in other communities, yes, it's more expensive, but the money from those communities goes
into the schools.
Goes to those schools, goes to programs like band and whatever the case may be. That didn't happen. So basically they took all, this money and they said they were going to spread it around. Well, they didn't. So that's the first thing. Then Measure 12 came out. And, there's all these different measures, and I don't see, look at every presidential candidate. We're going to fix healthcare, we're going to fix education, and it's the same platform for everybody.
But what if somebody actually does do those things?
I don't see anybody that ever has.
Well, I mean, there might be one person.
Do you not feel like Trump has done some pretty aggressive things that he said he was going to do?
Yeah, I think he's been aggressive for sure. I like to look at my president as more of a puppet, which they truly are when it comes to Congress and the Senate. And I like a eloquent president, somebody that can speak and doesn't piss people off.
That is not cohesive with the rest of your thought process. Because if you want somebody who is like that, then they're speaking to the audience and not getting anything done. Wouldn't you rather have somebody who
is crass?
Maybe a little bit crass, but getting crap done. Because that's a little bit more your style and a little bit of what you're saying.
Right, but this is the thing, because me, I'm in sales, right? So a good salesperson can spin, you as well, we all are. We can spin something, right? Mm-hmm. Statistics are statistics. You can spin sell, you can data this, data that.
I think
this person got something done. Okay, says who? Oh, here's some report that says they did. Okay, are we talking about our current president?
When you see a wall being built, that's not just a report. That's like a physical thing.
Do I agree with said wall?
And
no.
Tangible.
I don't agree with the said wall as far as building a wall.
So you don't agree with something.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with our current president's policies with this corona or COVID or what I would be considered is basically a flu.
Mm-hmm. You don't agree with his policies on it? What are his policies on this corona?
On the flu.
I don't think he's done anything really.
Wouldn't that be a good thing if it's just the flu though?
But that's the thing.
He left it up to the governors, and the governors of the states are deciding whether we're shut down or not. That's really
right. I guess if we're switching to our current president, case in point, last week he was meeting with state officials in California regarding the wildfires, and this person, I think it was the governor of California, had said, "Well,
Newsom,
basically, global warming is causing this. Science has proven it," and basically, our current president says, "Well, science is wrong."
But can I?
I think there's ignorance with our current president.
Well, I would,
based on his own opinions.
I would tend to agree with that because everybody formulates opinions off of facts that they're given or data that they're given. Right? There's data that's given about climate change, and I think there is climate change, and whether it's Americans that formed it or whether it's the Chinese, probably mostly the Chinese
humans, the world formed.
The world, mostly China, that formed the climate change. But anyway, you take all these. You go there. When the smoke was here, they were like, "Man, we're as bad as China right now." And you're going, "Oh, okay." So we have like an index to look at. But anyway, you get data, and then you make decisions off data. And just because somebody's an expert in that field, you're an expert in sales, and maybe I'm an expert in cars, and somebody's an expert in the medical field. We still present data, and then other people, even though we're the experts, they don't always take us at face value. They'll say, "Okay, Marshall gave his 2 cents about it, but I'm going to look at what I see, and I'm still going to draw a conclusion." And I think that's what our president does.
But to that point, too, you also, in that situation, because we've been partners, and you've been a client of mine for a couple companies now, you tend to listen to and buy from people you know, like, and trust. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter what data is coming out of my mouth, just like some people don't like the delivery of our current president. It doesn't matter what the data is. It's the delivery that people are very off.
Maybe he didn't like the delivery of climate change. So he
Let's
wasn't buying.
repackage it.
He wasn't
Hey,
buying.
On a side note, did you see? I sent this to Aaron today, but Governor Newsom in California just put an executive order in, and I'm not really sure exactly how this works, but he said by 2035, 15 years from now, no new car sales of gasoline, naturally aspirated, whatever engines, combustible engines
I
are
believe it.
basically just electric.
They could have done that 50 years ago. The electric car is not new.
I know, but
Well, the ironic part too is Tesla just fled California, where they're gonna.
they did leave, and the other part about that is if you make an executive order,
of plugins.
Yeah.
if you make, we're sponsored by Tesla. If you make an executive order,
Tesla with 2 S's.
can't you just? Oh, that's not a bad idea, huh? Can't you just flip that once you're the new governor and say, I'm going to get rid of that executive order? I mean, how's that gonna?
We got a lot of things, a lot of balls in the air, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it works.
Let's catch one of them. When it comes to voting, convince me that my vote counts, because in the state of Oregon, it's not as important as a different state.
Okay, yeah, but you're talking about the grand scheme of of the electoral college and the presidency. Let's drill it all the way back down to Oregon.
So presidency doesn't matter.
Well, we'll table that because we're going down to the local, because you said voting. You just threw out voting, and I think that's where you're still standing. And so
I did not vote locally.
Right. So
the lower down the rung you go, the less people are really voting.
Well, okay, that may be true, but whether your belief in voting is there or not is a different story. Like you might not vote because you're like, do I want to take the time, but do I care about the issue, and do I care about my right to vote? Because that's an American right to vote.
It
right?
is.
And that not a lot of other countries
Which is
are
what,
afforded.
50% of the population actually utilizes that right?
Right. So utilize your American right to make a decision.
I'll go in a different direction and say that I actually agree with Peter to the extent that I go, well, somebody's got to slow you down, man, because you're firing off some questions here. I would agree with Peter to one extent. And I would take
less questions, more just spewing.
Yeah, I would take it a step further, because I think a lot of people would assume that because I'm very interested in economics and politics, that I would be like, everyone needs to go out and vote. And in reality, I'm the opposite. Where I would go, well, maybe you haven't, but a lot of people probably would, because I make that assumption about you, and I'm correct. I actually didn't know your stance on it until today, and you're very for it. I would be more inclined to say, if you are not going to educate yourself and have an educated vote, your best thing you can do is not only not vote, but be convincing other people not to vote too, who are uneducated.
Well, I think
so. Like 2008, the P. Diddy Rock the Vote campaign was probably one of the worst things that's happened in American democracy in a long time, because they were basically mass campaigning to get every moron to vote at one time in that election. It was probably one of the worst outcomes.
So are you in support of the age to vote is 18 and it should be less or more, or you like that age to vote is 18?
I would think 18 is fine. I would be more inclined to say, what is their education? And
so you have to have an education to be able to, because there's people who are, I can guarantee you, have a better understanding of politics that don't have a college degree.
I didn't say college degree. I said education.
Well, then what's the
high
school? Of that?
And I'm saying, like, you have to have some basic understanding of economics in order to be able to vote.
I'm not saying,
but then you're going down the path of
I'm not saying
economics, and my parents couldn't afford to live in this town, so I couldn't. This high school is better.
Sure, I'm not saying that I want that to be the license, but I'm saying that it doesn't really matter to me what age it is. It matters to me what level of understanding you have. And you're right, education doesn't have to be high school or college. Education could be, are you interested enough to educate yourself on what the actual issues are at hand, and do you have a firm understanding of it? And I think that would be important.
To your point, Aaron, people don't know what they're voting on.
No.
A lot of times they will just vote party lines, and I don't think that's right at all.
No.
You're right. I saw a sticker today as I was driving, and it said, vote blue. And I was like, what an asinine statement. Just vote blue. I mean, I would never put vote red. I'm an outspoken Donald Trump supporter, and I think a lot of people know that, but I would never say vote red, because the next president that comes along might be an idiot, and the next blue president that comes along might be really smart. And
so great segue. My next thing when it comes to politics and voting is one of the reasons why I do not vote, and this is either on the molecular level. When it comes to like measures, that would probably be something that I would educate myself on and vote on.
Oh, for the win. We do
measures.
But it's still voting.
But not politicians. Measures, because measures matter. Politicians, to me, by the time you're a politician, I'm to the point where it's like, this is the best we have to pick from.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really, moron A versus moron B, like this person versus this person. It's so corrupt of a system that by the time anybody gets there, they've had to lie, cheat, steal, do something to get their position of power, and I just think it's a very corrupt system in general.
I would ask this question to probably both you, and you might have a better answer for it here, Aaron. But do you feel like as you progress in life, in the position that you hold, whether you're a business owner or just like an employee of a corporation, does that influence why you want to vote or how you vote? Maybe not how you vote, but whether you should vote or not.
Whether I should vote or not? Yeah, I mean, a little bit. It definitely influences. I mean, the older you get, the biggest indicator of wealth over a lifetime is your age. And so the older you get, probably the more money you're going to have and the more you're going to care about voting for people who want to keep more of that money in your pocket. So I do think there's a correlation there.
Well, I had a lot more money when I was younger, so I don't know.
You're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I really am.
He cares less now. This is why he didn't care about voting.
Well, I think as being a business owner, when you look at this is what I compare a lot of things to. When you're a business owner, you care a little bit more about keeping your money and keeping people's jobs and making sure the security of your business can carry forward. And in Oregon, we have that stupid corporate activity tax, which is the most deranged thing I can ever think of, because it's like
And where's it go?
Where does it go? How do I calculate it?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't we postpone it during COVID? I mean, there's so many different questions. And when I was posing the question to just some friends of ours that they're just not politically invested and they don't have a business or anything, I said, hey, what do you think my business should be taxed? Let's just put a number out there. What do you think it should be taxed? And I don't know. I mean, it was like literally a stab in the dark. And they're like, I don't know, 15%. And I was like, 15%? Okay. All right. So if it was 15%, let's say it was 20%. What would you think about that? And I'm like, that's probably okay. And I said 25. And they're like, well, that would be like the highest would be 25. I'm like, well, did you know that it's close to 47% when you take federal and state, depending on the gross dollar amount that you make, not your net gross dollar amount that you make. It's close to 47%. And
as a business owner, or not as an employee?
As a business. I'm not talking about like personally, but as a business, that's what you're taxed. 47%.
You 1%er.
So you own ABC Motors.
Okay.
And you made $100,000 gross. You're saying the state of Oregon is taking $47,000.
You would have to. It depends on what category you fall into, and you have to make a certain amount of sales. I'm talking about sales and gross. Okay, but when what's the federal level? It's 37%, and then Oregon is 9%. So what is that? 46. Okay, so it's 46%. Doesn't matter.
Because as an individual, I'm not paying 40. I mean,
as an individual,
I have on bonuses, but that's
you definitely are not paying that. But I'm saying as a business. So when people say tax the 1%, tax the 1%, the 1% are business owners. Just because we put that on the books doesn't mean that I pocket that money. That's put right back into the business. But the business has to pay taxes on that, and you're paying 46%. I think I said 47, so I'll correct myself. 46%. Mm-hmm. But in math, when it's a 6, you round up to the nearest number, which is almost 50. Right? That's a lot. And so I go,
that'd be almost a 10% increase. So I would stick with 46%. But when we're talking about millions and billions of dollars.
But when I'm trying to convince people,
it's a rounding.
It's a rounding. It's 12%, so it's just roughly 30.
Just taking a penny out of the 7-Eleven.
We're roughly socialist now. So
okay.
Yeah. So I guess my point is.
So when I'm taxed as a business, I want representation, and I want to convince people to vote.
I hear you, but then you have, then if you go party lines, you have Republicans who say don't tax the rich, and you have Democrats who say tax the rich. And in both scenarios, the middle class business person gets taxed the most.
That's not an accurate statement.
Okay. Right now, are the wealthy getting taxed as much as people that make less? There's like a threshold. If you make
so those
more,
are two different questions, because right now the middle class has never been as prosperous. How do you say that word? Prosperous. Did I say prosperous? Prosperous as it is right now. Now there is a big delineation between rich and poor.
Yeah.
But that gap right now, with under Donald Trump, the president that some of us don't want, has closed that gap. Now, every time there's a Democratic president...
Was that Donald Trump, or were those things that were done before his 4 years?
Everybody wants to say that, but we're going to go ahead and take the snapshot. You blame...
That's the same thing that they said to George Bush. That's the same thing they said to Obama.
But
things don't get done that fast.
They do. And if you want to take my stance on it, everything that happened in the years that George Bush was president, he's responsible for. Everything that happened the years Obama was president, he's responsible for, and everything that happened in Trump's era,
You don't
he's
believe
responsible for.
I don't know.
I
if
absolutely
agree.
believe that.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I don't agree with
because
that.
I think there's very
wholeheartedly.
clear-cut things that he signed in, and actually most of that tax legislation, which going against Peter's point, was actually signed in by Donald Trump. So it's literally signed by Donald Trump. But
I'm not understanding how you're disagreeing with me.
I'm not. So I know it feels foreign to you right now, but accept it. Let it wash over you. But I do think that you can't just blanket statement and say everything that was done in your snapshot is yours and everything that's done in yours.
I'm telling you that's my stance on it. So if people want to play the game of going, oh well, those are things that Obama did that Trump took credit for and yada yada yada. I'm saying no. Let's just take that and I'm going to categorize each one.
You can't.
But I am.
You are. That's
why people don't probably want to talk to you about this stuff.
No, because I think you have to have a stance, and if you want to pick and choose what you think Obama, like what presidency overlapped with what presidency, then you're just getting into muddy waters.
You know what else looks like just having a stance is when you go to the voting booth and just because your dad was a Democrat and your mom, you go D.
I don't think that's at all what I said.
Just a stance.
That's definitely not what I said.
Just got to take a stance. Doesn't matter if you're.
What is your stance then? I mean, are you saying
people
that
just vote party lines all the time?
Right.
No.
You're saying that then you're going to dissect every presidency and see, okay, well, what Bush did led into what Obama did, and what Obama did led into what Trump did.
I'm saying I didn't vote for Obama,
different...
so I'm not gonna. I lost that one where I go, well, the guy that I didn't vote for got in, but I'm gonna vote for Trump, and Trump got in, and I'm gonna be super happy with what he accomplishes. I'm not worried about parsing that out.
Well, those weren't the questions, but that's fine.
If so, full on Republicans, both of you, right? Mm-hmm. So if a Republican is,
I would say I've never been a registered Republican. I've been a registered independent. This year, I flipped to full-on registered Republican because of how crazy the other party has got in the city that we live in.
If a Republican does not win, will you support politics and the current president?
Absolutely support the president no matter what party line they're on.
Okay.
I believe in supporting the president. Now, I don't have to agree with his policies. I don't have to agree with some of the decisions he makes, but I agree that you should support the presidency of the United States.
Be it known, I'm not taking a stance one or the other. Hence, why I don't vote is I do not educate myself and don't. This is more I've talked politics because I don't feel as if my opinion holds weight because I don't study. You know, it's people that get in an argument just get an argument's sake. That's not me. You know,
I'm not super into like the social aspect. So yes, I'm a Republican, but it's not for all of the social reasons. It's primarily based around economics. And one of the things that we kind of touched on earlier while Marshall was rambling on and on.
Oh my gosh, let's just keep going to that.
One of the things that I dislike is that people don't oftentimes, they vote on things and they don't understand the hidden cost of what they're voting on. And so I read a book once that had a really good sort of encapsulation of this, which is if someone throws a brick through the window of a business and the business now has to pay the glass maker next door to replace his window, well, that's good for the economy, right? Because they're forcing some stimulus. It's like stimulus. Brick goes through your window, that's a bummer, but you have to patronize the business next door. So by all accounts and standards, that kind of looks like a good thing.
Until the insurance companies get involved.
But there's a hidden cost to it, which is that he was going to spend his money elsewhere on another business and patronize it, and now that business gets robbed. So kind of
or the fact that he got a brick thrown through his window.
Right.
Like, that sucks.
Right, but I think that sometimes there's spin on the way that policies are pitched, and it really baits and hooks, I'm going to say it, younger people, and probably a lot of younger liberals get baited into thinking that, like, hey, everybody needs everything provided for them, subsidize this, tax that, free this, and they go, well, how can that be bad, right? It feels good, and we want it, and people want free stuff, and poor people need help. But I think that the biggest missing component when we talk about, I'm not talking about education like you have to have a degree, I'm just saying educate yourself on what are those hidden costs, and I think that when you're voting, that's super important stuff. And that's why going back to Peter not voting, I'm not opposed to him not voting. I think Peter's a super smart guy, and I'm sure if he wanted to, he could be super educated and make a really educated vote. But if he doesn't want to, don't vote. And not only that, encourage all of your friends who don't know anything not to vote too, because that would be my thing.
Right. Right. Well, I guess that you had said something about, you know, the state and the people running the state right now, and look what's happening. I live in downtown Portland. I'm over it. Like, I can't walk down the sidewalk without running into a needle or a tent or whatever the case may be, right? But I don't know what that answer is.
But if you could change that, if you have somebody in, because you know, right, I mean, maybe you don't, but I would strongly feel that the governor has a job to protect us and do something about that issue. And if somebody else was like, hey, I can do something about that issue.
Brown, right? I mean, I think that what we're talking about is that, so my problem with what's currently happening in my front and backyard is that nothing's happening.
Right. So if somebody said, I'm going to do something about it, and here's what I'm going to do, and maybe it will or will not work, who knows, because you don't know until but they said, this is what I'm going to do about the homeless, this is what I'm going to do about the drugs, and this is what I'm going to do about the riots. Would you go, that's worth me voting for?
Or better question, what would it take for that person to come in and go, Ted Wheeler sucks, I'm going to get your vote? What would it take?
I guess what it would take is maybe a couple runs of people actually proving what they're saying. I think a lot of politics is they stand on a stance, they say it, they blow smoke up everybody's ass, and then nothing changes, nothing happens.
So you need to see the results first.
I need to see some results of something.
But wouldn't that be like, I mean, I know we're going back to the president, it's not the best, but going back to the president, I mean, that's like what he lived, right? I mean, he's a business person, and he produced results.
He came from a very rich family and got loans from his dad.
He got one loan of $1 million.
He also filed bankruptcy. He also hasn't provided tax records. I mean, there's a lot of bad things with the current
He got
president.
one loan for $1 million to invest in real estate.
Who gets a loan for $1 million though?
Rich people. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. He is a
Maybe
benefactor.
if his father was taxed more, he would have had $1 million to get to
I'm not
his son.
saying he's not, but there's a lot of people who've been loaned $1 million that squash it and don't do anything with it, right? So he actually did something with it, and not only that, he did.
He's not a self-made man.
Well, but he's not a squanderer either. He did something smart with his money.
He filed bankruptcy.
Yes, he
That's
took it.
squandering.
I will say he took advantage of our tax laws.
And he still does.
Yes.
Yes.
So filing bankruptcy means squadouche in this day and age.
I like the word squadouche. Good. However, he is taking advantage of a lot of things that turn people off. If you're a president, I don't feel as if you should be. If you are, don't get caught. Basically, like, do I believe in everything Obama did? No. But do I think Obamacare was decent? I do, because my sister got health care for the first time. My friend got health care for the first time. As somebody that was making a good amount of money and paying for stuff like that out of my taxes, I actually saw something happen. I saw my sister get to go to the doctor. Is she a vagabond living in the street? No, she works hard. She just doesn't work for a corporation that has health care. That's not her fault. So when I see someone promise something and I see it come to fruition, that's what I believe in. Just saying all these things like, yeah, if Wheeler's gone and Kate Brown's gone, Portland's going to be clean and everything's hunky-dory. I don't believe that for a second.
But isn't that why you have to look into my point with Trump is you have to look into their past and go, okay, what did they accomplish? Yes, he was given a loan, but he was able to make more money off of that,
but
right?
Pretty sneakily and greasily, and
I think we could debate all that, but regardless of that,
and I'm not pro or anti-Trump by any means.
You could still say that whether he did it sneakily or whether he did it, whatever he did, he still made money off of it, right? So the path got.
Did he have more opportunities because he was him than average Joe would have had because they were?
But again, I'll tell you, a lot of people get $1 million and they squander it. Okay, so
I'm not talking about the $1 million. I'm talking about when he was worth 40 and he didn't pay the $10 million he owed and put that $10 million, to Aaron's point, somewhere else and took advantage of that and then went somewhere else. I mean, that's a totally different topic.
But going to Aaron's point, what would it take for you to look at somebody, because they're not going to be able to prove themselves?
I am to the point where I don't believe anything politicians say.
But if you were to look at their background and go, okay, this person's running,
but I'm not looking at the background.
You just wouldn't do it.
I'm so fed up to the point where I'm just so tired of being. I feel lied to.
The interesting thing is that I love that argument though, that it's like, hey, and no offense, Peter, but Trump is greasy because he took advantage of tax laws, and of course, if you're a Republican talking to anybody who's liberal, not that you're liberal, and they go, yeah, you Republicans are all about taking advantage of tax laws and avoiding your taxes, and I go, it isn't the government's job to pick favorites. That was never what the intent of government was supposed to be to begin with. So the fact that there is even an advantage for business owners to take, like Trump evading taxes, is really going back to a government issue. That really isn't Trump's issue or a business owner's issue.
Why can't I avoid taxes then?
You can.
I don't know that you can't.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that do.
Yeah, actually, I have a friend who never paid federal taxes ever.
For a little while, you can.
I'm like, how? Yeah, well, that's totally different. But I'm like, how do you do that? And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. And I'm just like, oh, interesting.
No, I think there's some savvy people out there that know some.
I guess for me personally, is I have never gotten money back. I know I'm a very small.
Did you get Trump bucks?
I got nothing. I know I'm a very small percentage of people where I don't have a home, I don't have dependents, but I'm in the highest tax bracket, and I still owe at the end of the year, and I file single zero. That pisses me off.
Yeah, that would piss me off too.
What if there was something like, I don't know, some legislation that came about that could change that? Would you vote on that?
I wouldn't believe it until I saw it. I mean, I don't know. I'm on a very small percentile, but like my CPA every year is like, you got to buy a house, and I'm like, really? I got to go buy a house just so I can save? That's what I don't like. To me, that is cart before the horse. Like I've earned. You know, I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I mean, I had 3 jobs in college. I've worked very hard. You know, I take my business acumen, as you both know, very seriously, and you know, it's a partnership. So for me, like, to earn the dollars I make, whether some people think you're overpaid as you know what you do, or whatever the case may be, right? I made a certain amount of money. The government says you have no dependents. Cool. I'm going to give you as much money as you possibly ask for. To your point, Aaron, like these businesses, they found loopholes. That's not against them. Mm-hmm. I'm doing everything 100% right. I file single zero. I get more money taken out per paycheck. I still owe, and like a lot, like a lot. Mm-hmm. You know, last year I owed $6,000. Year before I owed $12,000.
Yeah, that's tough.
And that's filing single zero. So it's
Could you imagine if you lived in a red state rather than a blue state?
Move to Texas.
Yeah, well, I mean, who knows? But
well, I'm curious though, because you've been
that
very
was a plug for the red.
You've been very honest about.
My favorite color is blue, though. So outside of
although you're wearing a lot of red, yeah,
you are wearing red today, ironically.
It's maroon, but
it's a shade of red.
It's more red than blue.
I mean that you can thank my girlfriend because she says I wear all blue, and so I'm trying to change it up. So that's for her. But also, I mean, if we're going blue and red, I'm going to pick blue for the color. I'm a Crip, not a Blood.
You know, I thought about that today. When people are getting shot for their beliefs in the political party, I'm like, do we have a new version of Blood versus Crips?
We might.
Right now?
Yeah.
I'm always a red person because I loved the 49ers growing up, and then I moved up here, and then my high school color is red, my college was red,
the
and then I like
tone
the Blazers.
Of your skin and your hair is red.
So yeah, I've been a
although
red person.
I very much argue the political red and blue came way before the Crips and the Bloods.
Okay.
Like 1776 maybe.
I mean, who knew?
Yeah,
I don't know. But
I am curious though, because you've been very honest about, in essence, you're saying that you don't care, you're fed up, there's a certain amount of resentment you have towards the political system, and it's sort of like maybe your inadvertent act of protest to go, I'm just going to abstain from voting.
Right. Fight or flight. I mean, if you want to sit here and like have an argument, I'd be like, all right, I'm good, dude. Later.
So do you feel like you're probably one of the people who's an anomaly, where it's not because you really don't believe in this or you really don't believe in that? Do you feel like to some degree it's just a certain level of, like, for lack of a term, laziness? Like, I don't care enough to even care?
It could be construed as laziness. It could be construed as you said, fed up. I do have beliefs. I mean, I'm not like, you know, I don't know what the term would be, but, you know, I'm
convicted.
And there's nothing empty going on in my mind. Yeah. I mean, I have things I care about and I have opinions. I just I was maybe cut from the cloth or learned this behavior of, if you don't know enough about something, don't share your opinion. Mm-hmm. You know, I just don't.
Well, and something Marshall will attest to with me is, you cannot get me energized to do something that I don't believe in. If I don't care about it, I can't. I'm just a corpse going through the motions. Case
in point, you and I briefly talked about this. I've actually been talking about somebody we both know and meeting him for lunch next week about, like, for years I've been avoiding and or trying to find a purpose-filled life, right? Mm-hmm. Purpose-filled job, purpose-filled position, and total tangent, have been very successful in a lot of things I've done, and maybe a little entitled because of it. Like, oh, I've done that. Of course I can do this. But to your point, Aaron, is if there's no passion behind it, you ain't going to get my best effort. You know, and that comes with my opinions. It's something like this. Like, I'm happy to sit here and talk about this. I don't know enough. I know what I feel, what my opinions are. But if you were like, how do you feel about measure XYZ? I'd be like, I don't feel.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious if you think a lot of the not feeling, though, comes from really just boiling it down to thinking it's not going to matter anyway. If you did think your vote mattered, would that change your approach?
That's an interesting question.
Yes, I think it would.
Okay, so then you might be more inclined to be like, vote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would.
Isn't that the message that's being sent out to everybody right now, though? Like, hey, get out and vote because your vote matters. I mean, isn't that what they're trying to do?
I mean, that's always been the thing that they lie about and say everyone's vote matters. To Peter's point, it's mathematically true. Your vote really doesn't matter. Really Unless you're somehow magically in the dead center and the entire voting populace came down to a dead gridlock and you just happen to be the one vote that swayed.
Never happened.
Matter.
I get that.
It'll never happen.
Sure, you say it doesn't matter, but if enough people if there were enough people that felt like you and were convinced to vote, then wouldn't that matter?
If 100% of the populace of the state of Oregon voted, it still would not change the way it would still not change the outcome of the vote if 50% of Wisconsin votes.
I'd have to see.
Well, you'd have to get them to flip. That's the key here. Is like the states would have to flip flop. And then going back to our last podcast, I don't think the West Coast is ever going to flip ever in a million years. So
whoa, you went from not this election
well, you
season
didn't
to
ask
a million
me
years.
You said this, and I said no, but I would go
million
further.
years. So
the next million.
So really, I could just go every election cycle. We could have a bet going.
Yeah,
and I could.
And so I think that's why the swing state mattered because the president, the candidates know which states are going to vote which way, and the only ones that matter are the ones they aren't quite sure about.
Which why do they know they're going to vote a certain way? That's part of my problem with politics. Is that like, oh, it doesn't matter. You could be a child abuser, but you're red. I'm voting for you.
Yeah. In fact, Oregon had that Goldwater. It was literally like engaged.
So that's where it does not
My
matter.
main question, Peter, is when I run for governor, will you vote for me?
Ooh, tough.
I think we might need to start at a molecular level and maybe do like maybe a mayor.
No, mayors, depending on what city, you don't get paid in every city. So,
so you're looking to get paid.
Well, I'm looking
this
to make
is going to work against you when you're running.
Listen, hold on. I'm looking to make a difference.
My friend,
and mayors in certain cities don't make a difference because they
Sir,
don't
I'm
get
just going to be upfront. This podcast has already eliminated you from the running.
No, that's not true because that tells you what you don't know about mayors. In some cities, the city commissioner does more than the mayor does. So, like, me going for mayor doesn't do anything, and the part of being paid just lends to the importance of the job. So, I don't really care about the monetary aspect.
So you would like to run for governor for the title?
I would love to run for governor for the impact that I could make.
Is it because you would like me to call you governor?
I do not care. I mean, like, if the Portland mayor could make a bigger impact than the governor, I'd run for Portland mayor. But I would love to run for some political office that can make an impact.
So
I think
to answer your question,
I think I could cut
you're asking for my vote because it's you, not because of what you stand for. So that right there.
Oh, no. Okay, I like that. Let me
that right there explains my whole entire point. That millions of people vote just because they think they know somebody.
You said that you would have to see what they've done. So you know what I've done. So you could see.
I don't know what you've done as far as politics are concerned.
That's great. Okay, so I would explain and give you reasons as to why you should vote for me. I would let you know what I've done, and then I would expect your vote.
That's what everyone does.
He wants your vote now for information in the future. Right. What a politician you are.
Yeah, I'm turning into a good politician.
What a politician.
I would like to go ahead and have a CLS 550 for payment at a later date.
Yes. Oh, okay. All right.
And you know which one I want.
If I become governor, I can maybe make that happen.
No, you can't, though, because I would like the body style of 2010 before they ruined it with the interior of 2011 or newer.
It's a good,
very specific
good mix,
about
actually.
the CLS. Yeah. Well, I think we got to probably wrap it up. I don't have a whole lot more other than...
You got it all out?
I got it all out. Did you get it all out?
You never got it all out. You just learned when to turn the nozzle and just shut it off.
That's good. Good enough. All right. Well, if you guys want to give us your reasons as to why you should vote, go ahead and email Aaron at twoopinionatedguys.com.
It's a tongue twister, or Marshall at twoopinionatedguys.com.
No, I'm just Aaron.
Or future ginger governor of the state of Oregon.org.
Cast your vote now. He'll tell you what he's going to do later.